So really trying to take an inventory of your skills, your accomplishments, what type of education that you've had. Also, if you're a current student, you're going to still include your bachelor's degree and what you're trying to obtain for, and then your anticipated graduation. So then you really want to try to take a look at how can you target your resume to the position that you're interested in, and what is the type of impression do you want to make through on your paper. And we'll go through each one of these steps in further detail. Step 2 is really knowing the company. So typically what we will probably do is when you're just sending out a resume and you're applying, you're just sending your resume out. And then when you ask for the interview, then you essentially start researching a little bit more about the company. But when you're writing your resume, you want to try to take a little bit more type of inventory of what this company is. So essentially, what is the mission statement? What's their philosophy? Maybe also try to see if you can research what's their strategic goals for like the next maybe 5 years, because maybe you wrote a project or you did a project on a particular thing that they're trying to anticipate to include on that you can include into your resume to make yourself more of a desirable candidate. Step 3 is know the position. So this is the time when I look at job descriptions. So I essentially print out the job description and I highlight anything that I have done, even if it was maybe one day and I assisted somebody like my supervisor, or I did something as a class project or a paper, then you can highlight those and include it into your resume. So really understanding the skills that are needed, the desired qualifications, and what are the responsibilities and the duties. And then once I mentioned previously, what are those buzzwords and those keywords? And then also, did you know that employers typically take a look at resumes within 10 to 20 seconds to assess whether they're going to put you in the yes pile or the no pile. And so with this, you want to try to think about that your resume, when recruiters look at it, they're looking at it from top, from left to right, and then they scan it all the way down. So we'll go through each one of those areas and to make sure that it looks aesthetically appealing. And then also recruiters, it's easy for them to read it. All right, so typically this is our standard resume format that you guys can see. And I'm trying to make it a little bit larger. Okay, here we go. So this is a standard format. So again, you want to make sure that your resume format is easy to read. You never want to go lower than 10-point font. 12-point is perfect, but you never want to go smaller than 10. Page margins, it could be anywhere from 1/2 inch to 1 inch. And then page length is 1 to 2 full pages. So if you have 1.5, it kind of looks a little weird. So you want to try to see if you can either make the font point size a little bit larger, or if you have to make it and break it down to 10 points. Abbreviations, you always want to remember that you're not going to just put Cal State or CSUDH, because not a lot of employers are going to understand that. So you always want to write out, at least in the beginning, California State University, Dominguez Hills. Maybe you worked for EOP. You want to fully write that out, because again, we can't assume that the employers know the abbreviations for that. And then we also want to make sure that our bold, italics, and then also underline is used sparingly. And we're going to talk a little bit further into detail of how to make that look, because you don't want to always include that. And then paper type, this is standard when you go to career expos, in physical format, where you want to utilize the white or neutral tone paper. And then you also want to include the file type as PDF. You never want to send out your resume in Word document, because you never know where it's going. And so utilizing that PDF format, it always helps. And also with the PDF, it helps with the formatting, that it's going to stay intact, because as using Word, you never know what type of software that they're using, where the format will kind of go in like jumbles. And so you also want to make sure that you don't use personal pronouns such as I, me, and my. So kind of look at these like bullet points here. Kind of think about that this is I dedicated or I developed or I led. And so definitely try not to use that. And then disclose personal data. So you don't have to include your date of birth, your height, your weight, your picture. You always just want to include on the headline your name, city and state, your email, and always remember to use a professional email address. And then also include, you don't have to include any type of experience that's over 10 years old, and you don't have to include any type of lies. So this is how a standard resume will look like. So how we kind of went over utilizing like the bullet points and then also bold. And we want to make sure that anything that's italicized is used sparingly as well. So the first part of your resume includes your header. So just like this, it says Terry Toro, and then city, state, and then also include your LinkedIn if you have one. And then in your email, again, your professional email address and the phone number that's best reached. So again, please do not use your personal email address that says sugarbaby420@gmail. Instead, include your first and last name, and then your Toro email will probably suffice. So summary of qualifications, it's optional. This is something that I suggest to anybody that's like a seasoned employee that has like maybe customer service and you're applying for positions that are in customer service. So for this example, it says marketing communications manager with 8+ years of experience leading a creative team and then division's corporate communication department. So this essentially could be 3 to 5 bullet points, and it summarizes essentially your qualifications that you have within that field. So skills, I want to include this as well. So this is the difference between hard skills and soft skills. So in this area here, you're going to include your hard skills. So any areas that maybe you have gained that demonstrates like any type of significance within the field. You can list the areas in like 2 neat columns. And then also you can identify anything that mirrors any of the required requirements that's in the job description. And so this is like where it gets a little bit more on like the critical thinking component is your professional experience. How are you going to try to articulate that? So in this area, you're going to use it in reverse chronological order. This is like probably like the most easiest one. There's, so reverse chronological order, you're going to put anything that's most recent and present, and then you're going to go down to your tier of experience. So in the formatting, if you notice, you could put professional experience, and then the next part, you're going to put marketing communications manager or whatever position that you have. Then you put your company name, the city, and the state. And then onto the right side, you're going to put the month, the year that you started, and then where you end. And then if you're still working there, then you're going to put present. And then in this area, what we included is essentially like a brief summary of what your position stands for. And then down here in your bullet points is where you're going to articulate the accomplishments. So in this area, it says developed and launched an integrated multi-channel print, catalog, web, and direct marketing campaign that propelled sales from 3.2 million in 2014 to a projected 15.5 million by the year end of 2020. And so quantifying any type of areas that you accomplished, it always speaks highly onto your resume. So remember to try to include maybe like a summary of like what your responsibilities is here at the top, and then 3 to 5 bullet points of any type of accomplishments that you contributed to the company. Does anybody have any questions so far? Okay. So a functional resume includes essentially like what are your highlighted skill sets at the top, and then you bullet point any of your skills that you've done and what you contributed. And then at the bottom here is where you list your work history and then your education. So as you can see, it doesn't essentially have like the years like how the chronological resume had. So in this area, it just highlights what are your skills of expertise here. And then down at the bottom, you would include your work history and then the dates. So the difference between chronological order and functional is, say if like maybe you had a break. So down here for as like a program specialist, this person worked from July 2000 to 2018. And then there was a year break between 2008 and January 2013. So a functional resume can kind of highlight that. So maybe you worked at home, or like you're a stay-at-home mother or father, or you had to take care of your parents. And so there had to have been like a break in between. This is when you can essentially use a functional resume. But again, it's up to you what you would like to use. Also, it could probably articulate maybe your career trajectory. Maybe you had a career change. So in this area, you want to focus on your major skill areas instead of chronological. For those who have maybe like gaps in work history, and then also maybe change a significant career change. And then also I don't recommend this for those with little expertise. So if you're still trying to work your way up in maybe marketing, communications, maybe in criminology, then you want to use the traditional chronological resume that I mentioned earlier. So really trying to write a compelling bullet points, right? So the goal is to provide context, scope, details, paint essentially a mental picture, because we're all visionary creatures. So you really want to try to write compelling bullet points that recruiters could visualize what type of worker you are. And then you want to try to articulate that in your resume. So since they know nothing about you except for what you tell them. So one point is having one responsibility, task, and skill equals one bullet point. And then we'll go again into further examples. And then the next part, you want to start off that bullet point with an action verb. And you don't want to repeat it. So you don't want to have like assist or supervise a team of like maybe 5, and then you're going to put your next bullet point of using the same action verbs. You always want to try to use different ones. And then you want to also highlight any type of keywords that's related in that industry. So remember to always refer to that job description to utilize those buzzwords, because a lot of companies, what they're using is like a resume scanner. And the resume scanner, what they essentially use is anything that populates as many keywords that they want, and then it automatically goes into the yes pile. So remember to always take a look at that job description and see what type of keywords they're using. Next one, you want to highlight specific accomplishments and outcomes. Like, what were some of those problems that you solved? Maybe there's anything that maybe you had that like risk mitigated to articulate any of those areas. And how I mentioned before, you want to quantify and qualify any of your accomplishments. So how many areas or how many problems did you solve, or how many ads did you create? Maybe you're a graphic design artist. So how many flyers did you make, and then how often? And then also you want to remember to show and not just tell. So let's start off with the action verb. So you always want to start off with a strong one. So marketing analytics manager, we're going to utilize as like this example as an XYZ corporation. So in this example, they implemented BI analytics platform. So the strong action verbs is implemented, organized, managed, and researched. The next part, you try to avoid helped, assisted, or worked, because it's not considered as like where you took ownership of that particular type of responsibility. Next part is quantifiers. So how often, how many, and average, maybe ranges of something that you built. So we include this part as implemented BI analytics platform. That's the action verb. So the quantifier is by providing data visualization, qualitative CRM research for 293 million worth of business development expenditures. The next part is accomplishments. So what was the positive outcome? So you always want to try to include some type of result from any type of responsibilities that you've had. So in this area, the action verb again was implemented BI analytics platform. The responsibility of the quantifier was by providing data visualization and qualitative CRM research for 293 million worth of business development expenditures. And then the result, which increased revenue by 23.1% in the first 90 days. So if you can just see how compelling the results was from your accomplishment, it's so huge on your resume. And so then the result, what was the impact and how and why did you do it? And then this part, it says implemented the BI analytics platform by providing data visualization and qualitative CRM research for 293 million worth of business development expenditures, which increased revenue by 23.1% in the first 90 days. And also the result is, and is expected to generate an incremental EBITDA of up to 39.7 million in the next year. So does anybody have any questions right now that has to do with providing bullet points?
Okay.
My question would be like, how many on average should we have? Or does it not matter on average just by what is according to their standards for the job?
That's a great question. I think yeah, again, it's like assessing in terms of like, how could you assess like based off of the job description? And then you can also maybe take like that extra leap in terms of looking at their strategic plan, and maybe they're trying to average, or you can try to calculate how much that they're looking for and how much you can contribute to that company.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Was that helpful?
Yes, it was, because I was always trying to do about like 3 per job, but it's kind of crowded and kind of like all over the place sometimes.
Oh, are you talking in terms of bullet points?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, anywhere between 3 to 5, I would say. If you're in education, you can have like up to like maybe even 8. So it depends on like the sector, but typically besides that education, anywhere between 3 to 5. And you really just always want to highlight the bullet points, especially like say if you're looking at the responsibilities and maybe they even averaged out like 50% of your job is going to be research or analyzing any type of data or maybe like creative type of work, then you want to try to highlight those bullet points at the top. Because those are, whatever is like at the top of the bullet points is what's going to stand out to the recruiters.
Awesome, thank you. Because I am actually going into education.
Okay. Yeah, so with education, you can have even like 3 pages of a resume. So you don't always have to hold on to, it has to be like that typical 1 to 2 pages. In education sector, you can have like even 5 pages I've seen. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
I just graduated from the English department and the ESL program, and I'm new with this major. The type of job I was doing before, it has nothing to do with education. So how I will apply that in my resume?
With your experience, that doesn't pertain to education?
No, because I'm working at Camino College and I work on the assessment center, and currently I'm working in the admissions and records office. But I'm doing kind of like clerical work, data entry, all that type of work.
And I'm sorry, can you remind me again, what positions are you trying to apply for?
For the TESOL program, the English as a second language for community college, that's what I'm really going to.
So there's quite a bit of like experience that you have that can translate into a different position. So really like any of your soft skills that you can include that will essentially be part of the responsibilities of the positions that you're applying for.
Okay. Yeah, since I don't have experience and I know some positions opening, and then I'm trying to see how can I add experience to something that I didn't have experience before. So I hear saying that maybe you can add things that you'll be working with students, which I did, and did like type of workshop or something like that. But how can I apply that? That's kind of like.
I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, those are areas where it pertains to the positions that you're trying to apply for.
Okay. Oh, okay.
And we could talk also offline in terms of how we can translate those experiences into your resume.
Okay.
Because each person has like unique experience,
Right.
and then also specific to different types of positions that you're applying for. But really highlight, let me see if I can go back to maybe. So these areas with the competencies, these parts here, essentially recruiters are looking for. So if you highlight any of these areas, just like how you mentioned as like an example that you worked with students, you provided workshops, those are areas that you can include because it has like that public speaking, and then also wanting to help other students out.
Oh, okay.
If that makes sense.
Yes.
And I can also provide everybody my email address after this. And then if you guys want any type of career coaching to really try to spruce up your resume, I'm more than willing to help you out.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
I also have a question.
Sure.
How long should a resume be?
It depends. So anywhere between 1 to 2 pages. But if it's like an education, then you can have as many pages as you want to try to articulate.
Oh, okay, thank you. I'm pursuing a career in healthcare. Do you think it would be the average 1 to 2?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And like, I've been reading articles too that 1 page it just won't suffice anymore. So having 2 pages, it still is pretty good. You don't have to always try to narrow everything down into 1 page.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. My question is, would it be worth it to hire a resume writer just to, like kind of research in depth how to write these like really important bullet points?
That's a really great question. Are you a current student or a recent graduate or alum?
I'm a student.
You're a student. So that's why the Career Center is here to help you. You do not need to pay for a resume writer because that's what the career coaches are here for. We're here to help. So if you start your resume and then you can either try to set up an appointment with any of the career coaches on Handshake, and we can help you with revising your resume. So please do not pay for it because it's part of the services with the Career Center is part of your tuition. So really try to take advantage of any type of the services to you on campus.
Are you guys available for appointments throughout this whole pandemic thing?
Yeah, absolutely. We're providing any of our career coaching appointments via Zoom. So you can log on to Handshake. Have you ever been on it?
No. I mean, yeah, but I don't know how to set up an appointment.
Okay. So if you log into your portal, then there's a drop-down menu that has the Career Center and the Handshake. And then if you go into Career Center at the top, when you log into Handshake, then that's when you're able to make an appointment with a career coach.
Okay, thank you.
And we're still open during the summer too. So if you want to utilize this time to want to make an appointment, please do it. Any other questions before I move on to the education section?
I'm sorry, I had a question. You did say we have, for graduates, we have up to 1 year, right?
Yes, for
Okay.
free services. And then after a year, $60.
$50, okay?
60, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. You mentioned that the resume has to be 1 page to 2 pages, maybe sometimes 3 pages. Does it have to be back-sided, or does it have to be individual pages?
If you're printing it out, I suggest doing 2 pages, like 2 separate. When it's online, like a PDF version, then you're going to have it separate.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sometimes recruiters, I think that sometimes they forget that it could be double-sided, so they might not look in the back. So I always recommend for students to have 2 full pages printed out.
On that note, I was applying for a job with the city, and they wanted the resume. It was 2 pages, and it was kind of weird to give it was a lot of people, so it looked unprofessional to staple it, but it didn't. Otherwise, they would have lost it. So is it typical to staple them, or how do we, what would be the norm to give the document?
I recommend stapled, just because it goes through the cracks. And then that's a great point too, that with your resume, if you're gonna have more than 1 page, you wanna include your header on the 2nd page. As well.
Thank you.
Just in case it gets lost. Awesome. So the next part is your education section. And so I wanna touch upon having consistency with your resume. So, sorry, bear with me, you guys. Here. So with the chronological resume, let me go back. So if your experience or your education section, you're starting off with the position and then the company name, you want to make sure that you're doing that with all the other sections in your resume. So go back to the education section. Oops. So you know how like previously I had like the position title, your education, your bachelor's or your master's degree, you're going to include that first, and then the organization of where you're obtaining it from. So for here, for this example, Bachelor of Science, Clinical Science, and then this person graduated in December 2012. If you're a current student, then you're going to put anticipated graduation, and then either it's going to be spring or fall, and then the year that you anticipate to graduate. And then remember, you want to spell out California State University, Dominguez Hills, and then in parentheses, you're going to put CSUDH, and then Carson, California. Remember the city and the state. So remember, you want to include your full degree major, and you want to double check your degree to ensure that it's either Bachelor of Science or Bachelor of Arts. So always make sure that you double check that area. And then if you also have like a concentration, so like say for business, it's Bachelor of Science in Business Administration, concentration in marketing. So remember, if you do have any type of concentration, to really include that in there. Also, if you do have a minor, then definitely include that under education as well. And remember, like the graduation date, month and year, any type of relevant licenses, credentials, certification or training that you have done during that time, then you can include it under the education section. And the next part is awards. And then maybe like also if you have been part of like any honor society, so you want to have a different section that's included as like awards. And then, so for instance, for this area, it's like award of excellence for outstanding advertising. And then you're going to include the company name. And then maybe if there was like a particular type of campaign for it, then you're going to include that title as well. So this right here, this is considered as like optional. So if you're part of the Dean's List, you received any type of awards from your previous experience, then you can include that under here. And then this,
The Dean's List like multiple times, like how would you put that in? Would you like just put like the dates that you received them, or just put multiple of them?
that's a great question. So if you're part of the Dean's List, if it was consecutive, then you're gonna put like maybe like the month, the year, and then, you know, maybe present or until like that time ended. If it was like maybe like different semesters, like maybe you're really outstanding and you're like hitting all your classes hard and you got like really great GPA in the fall semesters of each year, then you can just include those particular semesters. So it would essentially be just like the chronological component of the dates here. So on the right side, then you would probably put maybe January or like spring, fall, and then you just include years. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. So let's see. So the additional skills, so the difference between hard skills and soft skills, you're essentially highlighting your soft skills in the bullet points under your professional experience. Additional skills is considered as your hard skills. So what are any type of software, language, certifications that you obtained, you're gonna include in this section, especially during this whole like pandemic that's happening and you guys are utilizing Zoom, maybe your company or other professors wanted to use other different types of software, you're going to include it under this section as skills. So only list like your concrete skills, not your soft skills. So like such as like your communication, leadership, and teamwork, that's going to be highlighted in your professional experience and how did you, what was the results of those skills. Here, you're just going to include like maybe any of your computer language and certification skill sets. Here. So remember to include anything that you utilized during this pandemic to make yourself more of a desirable candidate. So since you guys are all logged on to Zoom, maybe you guys also created meetings because of your student organization. If you're the president or you're the treasurer and you had to create the meetings, you can include that in here as well. Google Chats, same thing. Maybe you're also utilizing Microsoft Teams. These are all skill sets that you're going to include in this skills in this section. So again, demonstrating your soft skills through the bullet points under your professional area, but then this area is going to be your concrete, such as computer, language. If you're bilingual, then you're going to include that, you know Spanish or Italian or maybe Japanese. Also with language, maybe you're learning a different language and you could put basic as like your skill set, proficient, or essentially like you're still learning like conversational. So these are other areas that you can include in your resume that are also considered as like optional headers. So professional development, maybe you've gone through so many different types of workshops or you've gone to a conference that's related to the positions that you're applying for, then you can have professional development in that area. Maybe you're part of like the research team or you probably helped out with one of your professors writing an article, you can include those in there too. Maybe you're part of professional memberships. So as I mentioned before in the beginning of the workshop, I'm part of NACE. and then also MPAs. Those are memberships that I'm part of that highlights essentially me as a career coach. Also, you can include community involvement. Maybe you're really involved with maybe church or a nonprofit, and you're part of that in that area of volunteering with them. Like maybe with fundraising, maybe you help them out for like a day with something. If you're also have kids and you're part of like the PTA, you can include that as your community involvement as a section. References does not have to be included in a resume. You want to include this as like a separate document. And you don't have to include this right away when you're applying unless it's actually required. So you always want to try to remember to try to list 2 to 5 references that are your past supervisors, managers, maybe a professor that you've worked closely with. And then you always want to try to include their first and last name, the title of their position, the company that they work for, their phone number, and then also their email address. And you want to try to ensure, like maybe my past supervisor, for instance, I wanted to use him as a reference for something. And so he transitioned to a different position. So I had to ask him for his new email address and his new phone number. So remember that you want to try to make sure all of the contact information is current. A master resume is something that I have. It essentially contains like pretty much all of my details of my professional experience. Even if it was like 10 years ago, I still have everything on one document. And then I also include any of my transferable skills in one place, because if you create a master resume and you have literally all of your experience, then it's really easy to craft a different type of resume that's tailored for another position, and you just copy and paste your experience versus trying to write something brand new. So during this time, we're not in the library right now. Moving forward, we are all going to be virtual for the remainder of this year. And so if you do want to contact us, the best way to contact us is via email, or you can log on to our website. And then we also have our Facebook as well to really try to truly understand like some of the things that we're highlighting. We have several different types of workshops. We do provide any career coaching opportunities via Zoom. So I'm going to open up this room to any questions that you may have.
Hi, my name is Gabby, and I had a question about the award section. What do you recommend for someone to start building that portion up from their resume?
In terms of awards?
Yes.
Do you have any awards, or like maybe you're part of the dean's list?
No, I graduated in 2014.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to know, what would you recommend to build that section up?
In terms of highlighting what you've already accomplished, or if you aspire to gain some of those awards?
Or new awards, gaining new
ones?
Yeah.
Essentially, maybe trying to find any type of opportunities such as like scholarships, or maybe writing a grant, especially during this pandemic. There's like a lot of budget cuts that's been happening. So if you are an English major and you're really great at writing compelling any type of documents, then maybe trying to find maybe a nonprofit, or maybe even for your company, to try to develop some type of grant and then see if it's awarded, and then that's something that you can include. Any type of recognition that maybe you might want to gain, that could be something. Also, if you co-host any type of workshops and then you received any type of recognition for that, you can include it in that section.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Hi, I was wondering, where do we include our internship? Do we include it under the experience section or community involvement?
That's a great question, and I'm sorry that we did not highlight that in this particular workshop. But internships are considered as professional experience. Even volunteer work, it's still considered as professional experience. If you have any type of consistent work and you've contributed to that company, is considered as a professional experience. The difference between professional experience and maybe community involvement is, say, your internship, or you volunteered with your church for like an ongoing certain amount of time, that's going to be highlighted in professional. If you did like maybe volunteer for beach cleanup for one day, then that would be listed as like maybe community involvement.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I had a question. I am a Master's of Social Work student, and so so how do you, because I saw that you're very specific as far as how much growth there has been and those kinds of things, and for that particular field, we really don't do that. So how will you address that?
Great question. So you can quantify maybe how many, like whatever your population is, like maybe you're a social worker at like a community college or at a school, and then you see X amount of like maybe 4 students per day, or you can quantify maybe 100 students per week. And then that's where you can quantify like how many people that you've been working with.
Thank you.
Calculate as well, like how many that you've been working with over a period of time. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. So I guess my question would be, I was working part-time at an office, but now they hire me full-time. So I don't know how to adjust that into my resume. Do I still keep my old position, or do I, and I add on, and then I add my new title onto my resume, or do I just keep the position that I'm currently in and just add just the years that I've been working with that company?
So if I'm understanding you correctly, you've been working there maybe like what, 5 years, and then you've kind of transitioned into different roles?
Yes.
Okay, so you can list them under one area. So let me see if I can go back to this. So for you, you can put under your professional experience, what you can highlight is maybe the company name, your city and state, and then the dates, right? Overall, the time period that you've been there. But then your you can include different sections under that title or under that company name, such as like maybe marketing communications manager, and then you could put the time frame that you were working in that position. The next part would essentially be maybe marketing supervisor, but still under that company, and then just highlighting the different time frame for that position as well.
Okay, thank you so much.
Does that make sense? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay, cool.
Thanks.
So I'm sorry, I logged on late. Will we be able to see, like, get a link to this presentation?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
I had a quick question. Someone else mentioned about being on the dean's list. I was looking at my unofficial transcripts a few days ago, and I noticed that last semester I had actually been on the honors roll list. How do you go about getting on the dean's list?
That's a good question. I would feel like honors and deans is kind of similar, but I can get back to you on the difference between those two.
Okay, thank you. It's just a question that I had. Thank you.
I see a hand up. Is this Martha?
Real quick, if you haven't done so already, if you can please input your Toro email chat, so we can make sure we get you all a copy of the presentation. Thank you.
For the Dean's List, it's a 3.5 or better in 12 or more units.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
So we have about a few more minutes. So if anybody has any other questions or maybe comments.
So I noticed like this resume, I don't know if you talked about it already, but this resume, it's like the white and black one. Do you not recommend like the more like graphically designed ones?
That's a good question. It depends. So like say if you're like a graphic artist, then you can make yours look a little bit more creative. Otherwise, essentially this is like the standard type of resume that you would want. I also recommend not using any of the Microsoft or given templates. It kind of rubs recruiters the wrong way to use those because it shows that, well, number one, when it comes to templates, it doesn't really able to provide an opportunity for you to highlight your specific skills. It kind of makes you it requires you to put certain skill sets or sections in that order versus like a blank Word document. It gives you the opportunity to really try to highlight anything that's tailored to you. And then also it shows that with recruiters that you're not taking like that critical thinking skill set to creating and crafting your own resume. So generally for resumes, I suggest just using this black and white option and using a blank document.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, I just have a question because I think you did say that the resumes, if you go to like having 2 pages, to also include that our header in the top.
Mm-hmm.
Do we also need to put like page 2, or is that even necessary, like on the corner?
I would include that. You could put your
Yeah. Okay.
and last name as like, and then page 2.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, you guys have all been amazing. This was my first Zoom workshop, so thank you all for still being engaging. This was quite of an experience for myself. And then we will be able to send out this presentation to all of you. Elof, I know that you mentioned that for any of the participants in this workshop is including their email address.
Yeah, if they can just in the chat box with their total email so that we can get checked into the workshop. Yes.
Sweet. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Benita.
All right. Well, thank you all. Elof, do you have any closing remarks, especially since the Alumni Series is your week of coordinating all these amazing events? I'm not sure if you wanted to highlight anything else.
Yeah, just definitely go on to Handshake, check out the other events that we have going on. We have a cover letter workshop today. We have today at from 2 to 3. Tomorrow from 1 to 2:30, we have a virtual interview strategies and salary negotiation. And then on Wednesday, we have a virtual networking through LinkedIn hosted by Ryan. He's a representative from LinkedIn, and he's really awesome, and he's really going to teach you all how to use LinkedIn as a tool as you all navigate your job search. And then we have also a motivational talk from alumna Lisa Collins. She's the Director of Human Resources at Netflix, and she also is a DH alumna. So we're excited to have her share a few words of motivation and inspiration to you all. And then we also have on Friday another motivational talk from Demario Davis. He's an NFL linebacker with the New Orleans Saints, but he's also really well known for his advocacy for criminal justice reform and his role as a task force member in the Players Coalition. So he's a big advocate for criminal justice reform, but also the undocumented community. And so we're excited to have him share a few words. But these sessions with these motivational talks are really for you all to like engage with these speakers. They really want to have a majority of the session be Q&A with students. And so we're really excited to have that. And then I don't know if you want to share a little bit about the farmers insurance opportunities. That there's a farmers insurance jobs and internship info session happening tomorrow as well. And then next week, we are hoping to host a virtual education expo. So definitely stay tuned for that. We're actually been reaching out to different school districts and education nonprofits who want to host an information session because they are still hiring. So that will be taking place next week. Please stay tuned. We're still getting things up on Handshake, so we'll definitely be sending out emails in regards to that.
Great.
All right. Thank you all so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thank you.